Hi BookTube, it's Amy. I'm back with another segment of my 2024 bookshelf tour, and I've decided to temporarily skip over the final shelf on that side of the room and move over to these shelves here. And I thought we'd start on the top here, where you can see there is a collection of little bells here with various tones. And I won't ring them too loudly because I don't want that to deafen you should you be wearing headphones while watching this. And the school bell on the end is not the prettiest of them. In terms of sound, I like this one and that one the most. And this collection of bells belong to my grandma, and they belong to her mother, so from my great-grandma. And they were gifted to me in the summer of 2022, I think. So here on the shelf, and I'll just slide down a couple of the bells, is a 2-volume set of the memoirs of Jacques Casanova, illustrated by Antward Gaymard. 2 volumes. I'll pull off the first volume here. So there is a fleur-de-lis on the front, and I'll see if I can show you this without needing to take it down to the floor. But there it is in 2 very nice volumes, published in Great Britain, and I've read about half of the first volume. I've never read the memoirs of Casanova in their entirety. They are a little bit repetitive. If you've heard Casanova have one love affair, you've in some ways heard him have all his love affairs. Of course, there are different kind of love affairs, and we see the progress of his life, his maturity into from essentially youth into adulthood, into full-blown adulthood. But it is an interesting work to read. Next to that are Edmund and Jules de Goncourt in Volume 1 and 2. These I purchased when I was looking to purchase their journals. What I ended up with was a sort of biographical work with samples of the work that I was looking for. And I've read just a little over half of the first volume here. And so there is the title page. So it's got letters and leaves from their journals. Not quite what I was looking for, but I was enjoying it all the same. Next to this is a children's book that I purchased as an adult because I loved it a lot as a child when I borrowed it from the library. And this is a fairy tale work titled The Nightwood by Robin Mueller. And I remember not only being enchanted with the story as a child, but also with the beautiful, beautiful illustrations. And I don't think it's telling us on the outside of the book who the illustrations are by. But let's see, the illustrations. Nope, that's not telling us. Maybe they're by Robin Mueller as well. I think they must be by Robin Mueller, or else the illustrator would be listed elsewhere. So I think it's both the illustrations and the text are by Robin Mueller. Next to this is a travel memoir work by Robert Louis Stevenson called An Inland Voyage. And it's got some illustrations by Noel Rook, but it's essentially about a canoe trip that he and a friend took, canoeing along a river, and coming across very, very surprised people who were somewhat excited to find an Englishman, and an English author at that, just, canoeing and getting questions, where are you going? Why are you canoeing? This is not normal to be, on a canoe journey on this river. But it's a fun little work. And next to that is I Can Remember Robert Louis Stevenson, edited by Rosalind Mason. And this is a tribute to Stevenson, published after his death. And it's got sections in here by a number of people who knew him, and what it amounts to is, oh, there's a bookmark that's fallen down in there. What it amounts to is a biographical work told through anecdotes from the people who knew him. Next to that is the selected letters of Robert Louis Stevenson, and this is a more recent book. There was a dust jacket with it at some point. And that's edited by Ernest Matthews. There's Stevenson right there. Yale University Press. And it's just a collection of his letters throughout his life. Next to that is a biography of Robert Louis Stevenson titled Man and Writer by J.H. Stewart in 2 volumes from the Ryerson Press. And these were very, very cheap. And you can tell why. I bought them, in a bookstore in person, saw the condition, but still thought, it's worth it to add them to my Stevenson collection here. So it is a critical biography, and I admit I've not read them yet. Then we have a few small works just tucked on the end here. This collection of essays by Stevenson I have read. It's titled Familiar Studies of Men and Books, and it's on various literary topics. Next to that is a little not so attractive red cloth-bound copy of Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Then there is another collection simply titled Essays by Robert Louis Stevenson. And then that is the end of the Stevenson, because then we're moving into some essay collections by G.K. Chesterton and a volume by William Hazlitt. And so I won't pull out these individually, but there are three collections of essays by G.K. Chesterton. One is called Generally Speaking, the other is Tremendous Trifles, and the third on the end, in that greenish-gray cloth, is All Things Considered. And they are very, very short, some of them not lasting more than 2 or 3 generously spaced pages. And they're kind of on mundane things. There's one about going out to draw and forgetting to take white chalk with him in his sketching set, and being quite disappointed until he realizes that he's literally sitting on and surrounded by chalk, by rock that can be used to draw with, and that's sort of the whole bit of it. It's very, very mundane, very looking at the everyday in an unusual way, taking notice of the beauty and the small details of things around you, and taking notice of the subtle flights of fancy that your mind might go on when you're looking at a place or an object. And then in there is, well, I should mention there's a collection of G.K. Chesterton's poems as well. I prefer his essays to his poems. But then there is this battered white volume of Winter Slow by William Hazlitt, in, I would say, not the greatest condition, but there's some essays in here on poets and just sort of literary and social topics in general. And this poor bookmark is no longer attached to the spine of the book. That is a problem with volumes that have ribbon bookmarks. You'll notice with this one as well. Over time, the ribbon essentially becomes brittle, and any movement of it at all just kind of snaps it off at its root in the spine. So it's sort of unusual to find, I would say, a volume more than 50 or 60 years old where the ribbon is still intact. So that's the first shelf there. And maybe we'll just move to the left here, where there are a couple more volumes of Flaubert. We looked at Flaubert very early on in the bookshelf tour, and I commented, oh, my copy of Bouvard and Pichet is missing. And here it is over on these shelves. And I think when I was rearranging, I realized, oh, there was space over here with the older books next to the selected letters of Flaubert. And so that's how it came to be over here. And Bouvard and Pichet is a very humorous novel by Flaubert about two very good friends who have a bit of money to spend and constantly are taking up all these hobbies and trying to become experts in all these things, and in some ways succeeding, but in some ways failing miserably and not really realizing exactly how ridiculous they are. But here's the selected letters of Flaubert. And let me just check the publication date in this volume. Published in London. And so this is from 1954. And the letters are from various periods in his life. Some of them are to other notable authors, and some of them are a little bit more mundane. Next to that is a work that I quite like titled Around Home by Peter MacArthur, and I would describe it as farm life, almost pastoral in a sense. Published in 1925. He talks about the philosophy of farming, and he's essentially writing short essays, taking a philosophical look at farming life. Next to that is a work called A Bookman's Letters by W. Robinson Nicoll. As you can see, library discard, but that doesn't bother me too much. This is another book about books that could more properly end up elsewhere, but it's ended up over here. Lots of fun ex-library stamps. But it's got topics on everything from biographies, reviewing Emerson, Jane Austen, just lots of good bookish and literary topics. Next to that is Memoirs of Book Collecting by W. Carew Hazlitt. Also, as you can see, another library discard. If you're looking for somewhat affordable copies of older books on book collecting and essays on literature, library discards is often an option for affordable reading. So this is from 1904, and it's exactly what it says. Public and private libraries, founders and owners, all sorts of topics. It starts off generally talking about book collecting, national collections, manuscripts, and whatnot. Makes for some good reading. Next to that, we have a classic, The Essays of Sir Francis Bacon, in the Chandos Classics edition. There we go, another bookmark falling out. But this is quite a nice copy. It's compact enough, but the font is still large enough that I can read it. And Bacon writes on all sorts of, I guess I would say, life topics. Then we have a work titled My Steady Window, which is more essays. You can tell I'm a huge fan of essays. The first one in here talks about his garden, and I think that's really the only one that fully caught my eye so far. I tried to read a little bit farther, but it just wasn't catching my fancy. This is from 1871. The author is James Russell Lowell. And a good word for winter. Maybe that's what I need to read soon, because I bought this and started reading it in the summer, and I think winter. Winter is when I should be reading essays about winter. And this photo here might seem a little bit random, but the arrow there is pointing to one of my ancestors on my mom's side. Don't know who the rest of these people are. Not sure where to put this, but this is where it's sitting for now. So then we have essays by Leigh Hunt. As you can see, another bookmark in there. I haven't finished the entire volume. I often dip in and out of essay collections, depending on what I'm in the mood for. Pocketbooks and Keepsakes. That was a great essay. I was midway through Spring and Daisies. Maybe I wasn't feeling in a Spring and Daisies mood. Then we have a more academically minded book, A Primer for Critics by George Bowes. And I mean, it is what it sounds like. He talks about how to critique a book. And as you can see, it's a bit of a dated book. Oops, and there goes that's the purchase receipt. But 1937. And so some of his advice is not relevant to today, but some of it very much is. Next to that is an introduction to bibliography by Makuro. And this one is considered one of those foundational works if you're interested in looking at bibliographies for if you're a literary student or if you're a collector. How to read a bibliography, how to make your own bibliography, how they're developed, how things are transcribed typically, or were transcribed typically into published bibliographies for academic purposes. Little bit dry, a little bit heavily academic, but an interesting work nonetheless, and useful on certain occasions. Next to that is a biography of former Canadian Prime Minister Alexander Mackenzie. And I don't want to pull it out too much because the leather is cracking a bit, and I do my best to keep it moisturized with the products I do have, but I don't want to be too hard on it. Very interesting biography, very well written. I guess I should pull it out just to, you know what, I won't. I'll just tell you that the publication date is in the 19th century, and I don't want to open it unless I've got it on a flat surface and I'm able to support the spine and those boards, because I don't want to crack it farther. But this is sort of the little Canadian section, because next to that I have this 2-volume work on Canada's Department of External Affairs. They're not called External Affairs today. I believe they go by Global Affairs now. But it's this interesting little 2-volume work from their founding in 1909 up until 1968, about the time that this 2-volume work was published. And it's essentially about how the department came to be, its purpose, its early days, some of the notable figures involved with its founding. More of an academic work, but very interesting when I read it in grad school. Next to that is a book titled The Introduction of Printing into Canada, published in 1930. And it's a great reference work, and also, I would say, quite beautiful with its marbled end papers. And the printing is quite nice too. Nice historical reference work there. And then just 2 on the end here. A Harvard Classics edition of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. Purchased and read that in high school. And then a Dictionary of Classical Antiquities. Once again, a great reference work. Great work just to dip into. Absolutely wonderful, from the early part of the 20th century. So I'm going to stop there. We're at 20 minutes. So we've done this layer and that shelf. I'll just pan down so you can see what you have to look forward to in future videos. There's the Balzac. There's assorted things, what I might call the the slush shelves on the bottom with assorted things, everything from books I don't quite know where to shelve that I haven't read yet, to photo albums and full notebooks and assorted things. Some Canadian literature, including my Stephen Leacock and Hugh McLennan. Taylor Swift poster from when I went to see the Eras Tour movie. Journeys of Dorothy Wordsworth, hidden behind here. W. Somerset Maugham. The Letters of Madame de Sévigné, I'm slowly working my way through. Journals of Dorothy Wordsworth. Lots of absolutely wonderful stuff. And let's not forget that we still have this to look at and the top shelf over there. So still lots to go. Still many videos to come, but we'll call it